Look up the word crazy in the dictionary and you might just find an asterisk beside the definition that says, listen to the Subiquitous podcast featuring Sue Duffield and you'll find out what crazy means. Sue's travelogue journey of unfiltered stories, impossible miracles, and faith-filled fun will be revisited right here. So buckle up and let's get going with this humorous travelogue of an unfiltered saint, Subiquitous.
Hi, everybody. It's wonderful to have you back. This is episode number 27. I'm Sue Duffield, and it sure is a nice thing to accumulate friends as we go along with this podcast. I was in church yesterday morning and had such a great conversation with a few people that say, you know what, we didn't know you liked candy corn so much, or how you doing with them stink bugs, Sue? Hey, they're paying attention. And thank you again for paying attention. By all means, get on SueDuffield.com. And there are many different ways that we can stay connected, not only through email, but also, let's just say this much, we have been so blessed by many of you who have given to us during this pandemic time and have kept us alive and well. So I want to say thank you, very much so from the very beginning, thank you. There's also coming up near the holiday, and we're not too far away. It's hard to imagine. But there are ways that you can also bless your family and friends with maybe some of our music and even my book, Subiquitous, a humorous travelogue of an unfiltered saint. All of that can be ordered on our store page of www.SueDuffield.com, and we will get that out to you as well. And a lot of people ask for streaming as well. We're also on Apple streaming. We are on Spotify, and we are also on iTunes. So if you are like us who just bought a Buick that has no CD player, I understand there are ways that you can download our music as well as keep in touch with us too by just playing our songs and enjoying it. We love Couch to Kitchen nights. Couch to Kitchen is every Thursday night on Facebook Live, Sue Duffield Ministries page, as well as Jeff Duffield Productions page, my personal page, Sue Duffield, and also on YouTube. And YouTube would be youtube.com/Radio Sue. That's how you'll find me. A lot of good stuff out there. Who would know that we would be in the middle of what we've been going through in 2020? But I had such an inspiration a year ago about this time, when I was asked to speak for a diverse abilities conference in York, Pennsylvania. I had no idea what I was in for. I did prepare. They wanted me to be funny. They wanted me to have some levity throughout the day. It's a new name. I guess this diverse ability name is a new name for special needs individuals. And I kind of like it, though, and I'll tell you why. I like that most of all because what I found out on that specific day in York, PA, there are many diverse situations and many different ways to approach our beloved friends and family who are either cognitively or physically disabled. And what we're giving them is permission to walk with that and to live life. And we've watched so many people with great gifts and great talents, no matter what their cognitive or physical ailment might be. And that's been the empowerment of watching that. And I was experiencing that on that day. So it was filled with honor and respect and fun for the caregivers. And some were moms, some were dads, some were even older siblings that were taking care of their sisters and brothers. But all of them have dedicated their entire lives to supporting their diverse ability loved one. And I'm telling you, I was never the same. When I came home and told Jeff and many of my family members that I can't believe it took me almost 47 years to find an outlet and a venue for me to be able to talk about my brother-in-law. And it was just amazing to me how that gift was given to me just last year. I was so full that day. I could hardly talk. I was hoping to give out my own experience, and from what I heard later, I did, and many of them did respond in laughter, of course, and they needed the levity of that day. And many would come up to me and say, Sue, thank you so much for being a part of us. And I was like, I'm part of the club. I'm part of the club. That was what the most gracious part of the whole day was. And one comment that I made from the platform that really set in, I would say, my future attitude about people with disabilities. I said, listen, our family, the Duffield family, was gifted with an angel of a man named Wayne Duffield, who was Yes, diverse in his abilities and his disabilities, but I'm going to tell you, we were gifted by having him in our family. And I was so gifted as well to marry his brother. And speaking of his brother, there he is.
Where is he?
There he is.
You know what was funny? This is totally, you're going to have to go back to the subject, and I'll let you do that.
Okay.
But you said in the beginning, your book, An Unfiltered Saint.
Yeah.
It occurred to me, I'm sitting in front of this software recording this podcast, which the software we use, I do for music production. It's rather expensive. It's several $100s.
Right.
And it's got a lot of filters in it that filter stuff, all kinds of things in the process of creating sound. Some of them intentional to make it funny, some of them to correct the problem. There is no such thing in this software labeled a Sue Duffield filter.
Well,
There is none. There is none. But
yes.
if I had to speak of a filter, someone that maybe filtered you, or maybe you filtered him, I'm not sure. It would have been my brother. It would have been my brother because, well, I mean, once he met you and once we got married, basically he forgot that I existed.
Well, his life was forever changed. I'm just telling you.
Because he thought you thought you hung every moon that was out there.
Well, and this is how it happened. I immediately, one of the first nights that I met you, we were just 13 years old or so,
Something like that.
and there was this older young teenager there, and
Yeah,
I
he
would
was-
say he was 16 or 17,
He was
right?
8. No, well, he's 6 years older. I think we were 12.
Okay, so he would
He
have
was
been
in-
19 then.
He was 18.
18 or
He
19,
was 6 years
right.
old. No, he was 6 years older than me.
And, we knew that he had. Now, I didn't make the connection between you and Wayne at the time.
No, I'm sure.
Not immediately.
No.
But I was introduced to him.
Right.
And I said, "My name is Sue. How are you?" And he was just, he immediately hugged me like, oh, and I thought, oh, this is going to be good. Because I hadn't been around a lot of disabled at the time. You're 12 years old. There really wasn't anyone in our family that had any kind of Down syndrome or anything. So I wasn't quite as familiar, and being young, but man, I'll tell you, little did I realize that first encounter with Wayne Duffield would change my life forever. And, one of the jokes was, Jeff, and you remember this, as we grew, and then, of course, we were dating, and we got married, and, of course, he was in my back pocket most of the days.
Oh, yeah.
But I remember the one
There
thing.
were a couple exceptions.
There were a
but
couple exceptions.
For most of the 99.9% of the time.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest laugh I ever got out of him was, I said, listen, Wayne, don't forget, if anything happens to your brother, I have to marry you according to Scripture. And that was the funny part. We laughed over that for years.
Oh, he would always go, "Oh, Sue."
Oh, so stop it.
Yeah.
Stop it, so.
Yeah. There's
Yeah.
something to that effect.
Something to that effect.
The whole time laughing.
But so you are, as we learned in that Diverse Abilities conference about caregivers, there was a very wonderful workshop on the siblings of those who grew up with a special needs brother or sister. And from your perspective, I would just like to ask you a couple of questions that maybe our audience probably doesn't know. I know there's probably not a whole lot that I don't know already. But but there are some things every once in a while you come out with and I go, oh, I never heard that story.
Well, it comes under the, and there's a reason for me doing this, which I'll explain later. But it comes from the fact that the impression that you give that life didn't begin for Jeff Duffield until he
didn't.
met Sue Duffield.
That's right.
But
And
there
I
was
will-
12 years of activity in the Duffield house, and some of it you haven't heard about.
Well,
And you weren't there to experience it.
no, but you would think after a while I would have heard it all. But
No,
I
even
guess
with
not.
me and my, as my kids used to call my mother, Mom Story, our kids, not
Yeah.
my kids. Our kids used to call my mother Mom Storyteller.
All right, so
because-
tell us, what was your If your earliest memory of your brother.
Oh, dear Lord.
Go back now. Just really think.
I don't know.
What's your
He
first?
just was always there.
He was there
Because he was
all the
6 years
time.
older than me. So I
Yeah.
don't know. Oh, golly. I maybe based on film,
Yeah.
8mm
Well, that
film
helps
that my
too.
uncle.
I know. You think you remember something when it's on film.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I was like 3. I can go back. I have snippets of memory from a time I was around 3 years old.
So let's just say this, and here's a question I have for you.
Mm-hmm.
When did you first become aware that maybe Wayne was different than you?
I'm not even sure I know that either. I don't know if I can quantify it. I was probably, in the 7 or 8.
So you did know
age.
early on then?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And the reason is Wayne had some physical difficulties when he was younger.
Right.
There was a period there. We slept in the same bedroom for several years. Probably the first 8 or 9 years of my life, we had the same bedroom. We lived in what they call a duplex today. Back then in New Jersey, in southern New Jersey, we called them half a double. But my grandparents lived in one side and we lived in the other, and it was a 3-story house. Mm-hmm. The second story was where the bedrooms were. And he and I slept. There was only 2 bedrooms on that floor. The third floor had potential for bedrooms, but they never ran the heat up there, so it was not heated or air conditioned or anything like that.
I remember a story your
Anyway.
mother used to talk about, you guys fighting over covers.
Oh, that was on trips.
Oh, that was on trips? Okay, so in a
they'd put-
hotel room?
Mom and Dad would put us in the same bed. They'd get 2 double beds in the hotel rooms, and they'd put obviously the 2 of us boys
Yeah.
in the same bed, and yeah, we'd fight over the covers. And my father would get up and give me whatever,
Yeah.
and give him the other one, the spread or the sheet or whatever in the hotel, and say, here, knock
Right.
it off,
That's
kind
right.
of thing. No,
And-
but we slept in the same room. One of the earliest memories that I have, I'll be frank with you, the earliest memories were Christmas.
Okay.
He was a pain on Christmas morning. Oh, he was a pain.
What does that mean?
Because he would wake up at 4 a.m.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's...
and want to wake everybody up at
He was
4:35.
excited.
Oh, I know, but he was still a pain. He was worse than me.
Yeah.
Because it's never getting up early in the morning has never been, big on my list of things to do.
Right.
And he always was an early riser. He always woke up early.
Right.
And slept very lightly anyway. You could easily wake him up. Just, going in the room would wake him up.
Right.
And so of course, excited and the rest of it. Yeah, some of the first memories were him coming and waking me up.
Let's go.
And getting out of bed. And
Get
waking
out
up,
of
Let's go
bed."
downstairs. And
Right.
of course, we try to go down the stairway, which was between our bedroom and my parents.
Mm-hmm.
And my father would hear us on the creaky wooden steps and get back in bed.
It's too early. Santa didn't come yet.
Because most times it hadn't been my father. Had only gone to bed an hour or 2 before.
Right.
Because here's the Christmas memory. Dad always seemed to work on Christmas Eve because he was in the grocery store business.
Uh-huh.
And he was of the firm belief, you don't subscribe to this, and so do a lot of other people. He was of the firm belief that you didn't put that Christmas tree up until Christmas Eve.
I know. That was a Philadelphia thing. I
must have
promise
been.
you, there's no
It
one in
must
the
have been.
South that thinks that way.
Oh, good Lord, no.
They put Christmas trees up in August down here. I'm telling you.
Yeah, and multitudes of them. 6 and 7 trees
So
in
it
one
was
house.
It would be magical for you when you woke up.
We
Sunday.
we would go to bed Christmas Eve. Mom would have some decorations in the window,
Yeah,
a
yeah,
candle,
but
and
nowhere
a Santa
near.
Claus kind of
Right.
thing or whatever.
Right.
But we would go to bed at night. The house looked relatively normal. And then once we got in bed, Dad would go
Yeah.
to work setting up the tree and the lights and the decorations.
Right.
And then whenever my brother would wake up, we'd come down and Dad would leave the lights on.
Yeah. Yeah.
on the tree.
Yeah. Are you crying?
No, I'm not.
I know. Listen, I already know that this is going to be an emotional podcast. I already know. I'm already there, so I'm ready for a good cry right now.
So let's keep going.
Well, it's not a bad cry, though.
No, I didn't say it was bad.
But I'm going to try to center you in on some things that might trigger some memories that are even, I think.
I'm trying to. I'm not making it easy on you, but I am trying to answer.
I know you are.
When I remember, the earliest memory. So anyway, around Christmas, and here's the reason. Because we would get identical Christmas presents. One of the first ones we got that was identical was these. It wasn't Rock'em Sock'em, but it was a robot. They were green and plastic, and they would go around on the floor.
Just exactly what you needed, since you were already fighting as it was.
Yeah, oh yeah, exactly. I guess they figured, well, they're going to fight, might as well. And it had a remote control. It was not a wireless. That didn't exist in those days, but it was connected to the unit. And it was some kind of monster looking thing.
Yeah.
And the arms and it was just the arms would go back and forth, and and you could box with them, or they weren't really robots for fighting.
No.
But nonetheless, we butted heads with our robots. We get a big kick out of that.
Funny.
That's one of the earliest memories.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, one of my questions again, too. When did you figure, now speaking of the fighting that went on, and there were times your mother walking around, I remember, with a belt in her hand to try and control you guys.
Yeah, I tormented the life out of my brother.
No, you did not.
Oh, I did.
Oh, my word. What were you thinking?
Oh, he was easy to tease because he played into it.
But when did you figure out? Because Wayne was a lot bigger than you.
Yeah, especially in those days.
And I mean, he continued to be a lot bigger than you, even into your adulthood. Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this question. When did you finally figure out that you could take him down?
Oh, in my teenage years.
Okay, because
not because I was stronger. It's just I had the ability to use leverage.
There you go.
Yeah.
Leverage.
He did not know how to use leverage. He'd just come at you.
Right.
God help you if he got a hold of you.
Yeah, that's true.
That was not, my mother had to rescue me more than once.
Right.
From the clutches. Most times I was faster than him.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe now, but in those days I was faster than him. I was much smaller. But I don't know if my mother ever told you this, but he every morning would go upstairs and get me. Again, he was 6 years old when I was born. He would get me out of the crib or bassinet or whatever and bring me down the stairs to my mother in the mornings. My mother said the first time that... time he did that, she had a heart attack.
But you were his baby.
Oh.
I mean, really.
You saw that
I did.
years later with David and Annie.
Yeah.
With our kids. You saw how he behaved.
Well, before we fast forward to
that's
that.
Okay. That's okay.
I just want to...
We were talking about the early days, so that's why I referenced
and I want to stay there just for a second.
Okay.
The couple of things that I recognized, first of all, I loved watching Wayne in church. And I loved watching him sing. And I loved watching him clap his hands. He couldn't sing. He could not sing, bless his heart. And one of my favorite things, he loved gospel music. And you know what I'm going to go. He would put on headphones listening to his little Walkman, his little cassette Walkman, and would sing to the top of his lungs to these gospel tunes. And you'd have no idea what he was saying. And you had no idea what key he was in. And it would sound pretty much like this. Hey, mama, no, hey, mama, no, ma. And I mean,
but it would my father nuts.
But I loved that. And so, me, right? As I became more indoctrinated to your family and became more of his sister probably than anything. And then, of course, your sister was his baby as well.
And she deviled him too.
And she did. And then it just blew my mind how I could make fun of him in a generous, loving, caring way, and then him come running after me. It was just so much fun. I mean,
he was never mad at you.
No.
I can't say the same for me and my sister, but he would not get mad at you.
Oh my!
Yeah, you had special citizen status.
It is true. So then later, you're right. Later on, as we got married and we had our own children, it was always a concern, I think, from your parents' perspective. And I watched how they raised him. Your dad was really hard on him in a good way. It wasn't bad.
Most of the time.
there were times where I would go like, "Oh, I don't think you have to be that hard, George."
No, yeah,
But
yeah.
I understood the process. We were never embarrassed taking Wayne anywhere in public.
No.
Because he knew how to carry himself, and he knew how to behave.
Sometimes special needs children, as we all know, don't have the capability to recognize when they're talking to a stranger or even a friend. It's not family.
Right.
When, for lack of a better word, enough is enough.
Right. That's right.
My father knew that, and if you really want to analyze it, I think it was more about my father.
Well, that may be a future
than it was
podcast.
about, yeah, exactly.
But yes,
being
I
embarrassed or whatever.
agree. And I can't listen. I understand.
So he rode herd, as
Yeah,
my dad would
yeah.
say, on my brother. Sometimes went a little bit far,
Yeah.
and even friends and family would say to my dad, "George,
Back off."
He's okay.
Yeah.
He's okay. I'll say something if he gets on my
Right,
nerves,
that's
or if he,
true.
yeah." So, but that's
Yeah.
another story.
And then taking him with us when we would sing at different locations, different churches.
Sure.
A lot of times he would go with us, or your parents would come too. And let me tell you something. The man never hesitated in helping.
Oh no.
Ever.
Oh, no.
I mean, if I said to him, "Wayne, I need help with my suitcase," or "I need help with the CD rack," he
Well,
was
if
always
you
there.
said it.
Well, that's right. If you said it,
you
he'd look
said-
at
if
you
I
and
said
walk
it,
away.
No, that's not fair. No, if I asked Wayne to help, he would.
Yeah,
He
but,
would.
but reluctantly, and do this under his breath.
Sometimes, yeah.
I have to help him with
No, but with you, it was like, "Oh, do you need that wall taken down?" Okay, sure.
Or here's another fun thing. We would go and spend money Christmas time, and I'd wrap presents because he loves wrapped presents. It didn't matter if I bought little things. I would wrap up a lot of presents for him to open
Yes.
because he enjoyed that.
Yes.
So he would open up something and he'd look across the room and he'd go,
and the name tag would say
to Wayne
from Sue
Jeff
and Jeff, or
That's
Jeff
right.
and Sue,
That's
or whatever.
right.
Yes,
But-
whatever year it was.
He would always say from across the room, "Thank you, Sue." It was never you, ever.
And after a couple of years of that, I'd wait for him to get done, and I'd get in his face. I'd go, "Hi, remember me?" Yeah. Well, what's my name? Jeff. And then I'd show him the tag, say, "Who's that on there?"
But see, here's what
Jeff.
he knew I was the purchaser
Yeah,
of
he did.
most of the gifts for
and
him.
He knew that you bought them. Yes, he
Right.
did.
But he also didn't realize that you helped fund that.
I was never insulted about
No,
it
I
because I
know.
understood the circumstances.
Right.
But it was just something to make. I would do it just to make everybody laugh.
Of course.
It was funny. It's like, hey, your brother participated in. Oh, okay, thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff. And anyone that's in our audience today listening who has ever had an experience with Wayne will all say the very same thing. I mean, we've had very, very household names across the nation that have followed us in our music and different things who know Wayne.
Yeah.
And they all say the same thing over and over and over again, that if you show one act of kindness,
Yeah.
even if it's the tiniest of
You'd better mean it.
greeting towards Wayne, you've got a friend for life.
And you'd better mean
You
it.
got a friend in me.
Yeah,
I
this
mean,
is
forever.
true.
And he will never
Forget
ever
it. No,
forget your name.
He never did.
No. In fact, I used to go up to him and say, "Wayne, see that guy over there? Yeah. What's his name?"
Yeah, no doubt.
And this is the blessing, of course, being raised, and since I've known you since I was 13, and we have always had Wayne in our scenarios. We never, ever, ever put him away. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
And we
no. Oh, no.
Later,
You would have gotten into a death struggle with my mother.
I know.
Over that.
Yes.
That would never have happened.
No.
One of you would have died, you or her.
That's right.
But one of you
That's
would
right.
have died trying to separate
know.
her from her boy.
and the fact that my kids, our kids, loved their Uncle Wayne.
Oh yeah.
I mean, is just, it was amazing to watch. Of course, David was a lot more, I would say, just basically just kind of hanging out with him.
He's a lot more like you.
Yeah, and Annie was the one was like the interrogator.
Annie was Annie was more like my father.
I know, it's
who
true.
felt like she had
Wayne,
to
sit
order
down.
Wayne. Yeah,
Shut up. Sit down.
And
Move over here. Get out of my way.
Wayne had to deal with it with my old man. He wasn't going to take it from her.
It was funny to watch. He
Oh,
loved
it was
her.
he
Loved holding that little baby girl.
Oh, gosh, yes. Oh, dear, yeah. But he wouldn't go to take orders from her.
Right. But we all felt, and here's what I came away from that conference last year, Jeff. I just came home thinking, wow, even more so, what a gift we had given to us. Wayne's life changed dramatically when your mother passed away.
It did.
And it changed the whole family system.
Yeah, it did.
We did see some breakdown in his life. I mean, he was connected at the hip to your mother. There's no doubt about it.
It aged him.
It really did very quickly.
He never could express
No.
it. He didn't have the vocabulary or the ability to express
That's right.
really what he was feeling. Although, when you would get him to say something and tell you what he was thinking or feeling, the one he told it to was you.
Yes. And so this is what I would do when I would be on the road and I'd go up there.
Yeah.
And it was just your father and him, which ended up not being so very good. But in the early stages, when I had the permission to just take him out for the day, and he would love to go to Dollar Tree. And we just walked the aisles of Dollar Tree, and I'd say, well, what would you like to buy? And inevitably, it was never something for himself.
Yeah.
It was always something for the dog or something for your dad.
Yeah.
Or what do you think you'd like to have, Sue? Which is kind of funny because here I am in Dollar Tree buying something that he picked out for me.
Well, that was when I was buying it. You know.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I don't know.
But he would one of the most amazing conversations I ever had with Wayne was in the car about a year after your mother passed away. And it occurred to me that there was no one truly asking him this question. And I asked him, I said, Wayne, do you miss your mom? And then I just shut up. And for the next half hour, he talked to me in such an adult voice, cognitively incredibly fluent, of his pain and his anxiety of missing your mother.
Yeah.
And I don't, if anything, I learned not only for those who are suffering from, ways to be able to speak their mind, but even for those of us during this pandemic right now that have become so consumed with fear and so consumed with what if, and no one's giving anybody a privilege to be able to speak and to talk because of either being part of the cancel culture or, how dare you have this opinion or how, and it's so sad to me that's why, first of all, Jeff, we've created this podcast as a conversation between you and I, that we can allow our audience to see, hey, we're not perfect, but we're working out our salvation every single day, but we have learned to appreciate the small things.
Right.
And that was not a small thing on that day, going to Dollar Tree that day and asking him how he was feeling.
Right.
And that in itself, I promise you, that was an eye-opener for me, that diverse ability people who are going through tough times need equally the attention of grief. They need equally the attention of how they're adjusting to life when changes come.
I don't think Wayne ever felt any less strongly about anything than you or I.
No, he just
or
had a hard
anyone else.
time
He just didn't have the ability.
Explaining it, right.
Yeah, didn't have the vocabulary and so forth and so on to be able to express himself
Right.
like most of us
Right.
would. But I
Right.
don't think feeling-wise he was any different than you or I or anyone else.
Right.
So-called normal people.
You were...
But what was fun? My father and him had especially as you alluded to, the later years are rather antagonistic. Because it was funny because I got my brother. It seems like I became the father there at some point.
Well, that happens. We end up becoming the matriarch of the patriarchs.
Yeah, and I got after my mother passed away a few years after, I got him into the social working system there in Maryland,
Right.
and got things covered for him that Dad wasn't able to do, and one of them was to get him into this workshop,
Right.
which he thrived on, and he was making the grand total of what $9 a week or something like that.
Oh, but
I
let me
think
tell you, it was
It-
all
the-
his.
the total doesn't matter. Yeah,
I think
no,
on that last check, he got like $12 and something.
something like that.
And it
yeah.
was just absolutely wonderful.
The amount
Yeah.
could have been $12,000 as far as
Exactly.
Wayne was concerned.
Exactly.
It didn't. The monetary value didn't matter.
No.
It was his money, and he developed a sense of independence. And he figured out in his mind, to put it bluntly, I'm finally done with the old man.
Yeah. You know what?
Even though
And
he
guess
was
what?
still
He
living in
didn't-
his house. And
Yeah.
and my father, who for almost 65 years,
Yeah.
had been responsible for Wayne, obviously, the care and feeding and the
Yep.
protection. So
That's
forth.
right.
And the authority figure lost that position of influence, shall
Yeah,
we
he
say,
did. That's right.
almost overnight.
It did.
And Dad in his 80s didn't know how to handle it to the point where one of the times we stopped up there to visit, walked in and they were bickering back and forth. And I looked at my father and said, remind me again, just help me here. Which is the handicapped person?
Yes. Which one of you?
Could you tell me? That didn't exactly endear my father to me at
And
that
that's,
point, but he
you
got
know,
over it.
If nothing more, too, Jeff, in the future of the world to come and the future of what's ahead of us, at least we're making serious strides at telling our history. That if anybody ever wants to tune in to find out what in the world how we were made and why we were made, we've got it up here.
Oh, good
But in
Lord,
closing,
yes.
I've two things, and we need to
Yes.
get out of here quick. But I want to say to you, Jeff, there is one story that still stands out as one of my favorite stories, and it has to do with Steve Carlton. And you have to tell me, you have to tell this one. This is great.
I'll tell it as quickly as I possibly
Okay.
can. Steve Carlton was a Hall of Fame pitcher for the Phillies.
Yes,
look it up
that's
if
right.
you want to know all about him. Tremendous pitcher.
And Wayne is a diehard.
Was a
diehard Phillies fan. Oh my
Phillies
gosh! Yeah.
fan from day one. So this is years ago. We were all much younger. I was in my 20s, so Wayne was maybe in his late 20s, if
Right.
that.
Right.
And we were over to my dad's house. With dad and mom's house, with any baseball team, with any athletic team, with any sports situation there's always, no matter how good you are, there's always somebody that, if for lack of a better word, is your nemesis, somebody that gives you problems.
Yeah. That's
Bill
right.
Russell had his, or not Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain had his Bill Russell with the Celtics.
That's right.
Charles Barkley had his Michael Jordan. Guys,
Yeah.
you just never can beat them.
That's right.
Well, the New York Mets baseball team was Steve Carlton's nemesis. He just couldn't beat them.
Yeah.
Whatever,
Right.
We were over there the night before the Phillies had played the Mets, and Carlton pitched, and he lost like 2-1 or 1-0, something like that. And there was a guy on the team who was a bench player, who was not good enough to start, but he just wore Carlton out. He would get 3 or 4 hits every time he pitched.
Right.
And so we were standing there talking about it in the living room at my dad and mom's house. And Wayne said to my father and I, this particular ball player, who I don't remember his name, says, "Oh yeah, he's Carlton's nemesis."
Uh-oh.
Smart aleck younger brother
Yes.
standing there going, thinking to myself, "Oh, Wayne, where did you pick that up? Who did you hear say that?
Yeah.
You really don't know who, the meaning of the word nemesis." So, smart aleck brother that I was, I put my foot in my mouth and looked at Wayne and said, "Oh, Wayne, you don't really understand what the word nemesis is, in that situation." And he looked at me and he says, "Means Carlton can't get him out."
And he was right.
And he was absolutely.
Oh, man.
And my father looked at me and said, "You think he doesn't know?" And from that day on, I didn't question.
There, you didn't have to.
I figured Wayne understood, as with a lot of folks with special needs, Wayne
That's right.
understood a lot more than he let on or was able
Right.
to let on.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, what I think I'm going to do, Jeff, on YouTube is an interview that I did with your brother when Annie was in college, and this was long before iPhones.
Right.
I would make with my camera a video and then send it to Annie as an attachment on an email.
Right.
And I think I'm going to post that on my website so that anybody listening to this podcast, if you'd like more fun and enjoyment of meeting the man that changed our lives, Wayne Duffield, You can get on my website, SueDuffield.com, on that homepage, and I'll post that. But he left us way too early. We had a special funeral for him. Everybody came dressed in Phillies gear. Your cousin played "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" on his French horn.
Yep. And with me, both of us played together.
And we just, it was just a celebration. We were able to get a special commendation from the Phillies organization honoring him as a true fan of the day.
Yep.
And the whole thing really, though, boiled down to this. His community, his friends, his diverse ability friends came from the group home and the workshop. And as they walked in, I realized, and if I can get through this, I realized we were in the company of greatness. And if anybody in your lifetime have ever had an opportunity to watch the care and the understanding and the freedom of expression that those who we say are disabled, let me just tell you something. I don't know, just like Jeff said, I don't know who's disabled, truthfully. I think we are. Yeah. So thanks for tuning in to this special edition of the Subiquitous Podcast, number 27, Living in Wayne's World. And that is the truth. And we continue to do so, even when he's already in heaven, preceded us. But we thank you for listening today. Don't forget to get on SueDuffield.com. And especially during the holiday season, if you would like to order some music or possible a book, whatever, get on SueDuffield.com and you'll see all that information as well. And there's another way, too, that you can stay connected with us, and that is through our Thursday night Couch to Kitchen concerts. And that's every Thursday night on Facebook Live. In the meantime, do yourself a favor. Find someone in your community, find someone in your church, find someone online possibly, especially during the lockdown. Find someone that might just need a little more encouragement, and guaranteed they'll be the one in the end that will encourage you. I love you all. We'll see you next week